Hi everyone, hello, my name is Michael Greaney. I am Senior Lecturer in English Literature at Lancaster University, and I'm here today to talk a little bit about Jane Austen's novel, Mansfield Park. I want to give you not a kind of comprehensive overview of the novel. This talk isn't going to contain any spoilers, but what it will, I hope, do is give you an idea about what to look for as you make your way through this novel. What I'd like to focus on is the fact that I think by some considerable margin, Mansfield Park is Jane Austen's most controversial novel. It has divided critics and readers in all sorts of ways since it was first published, and I think it continues to do so. And I think it's always worth reflecting on what it is about a given piece of writing that can provoke vehement disagreement and wild differences of opinion. It can be a good place to start when you're analysing. So with Mansfield Park, there are three areas of controversy that I'm going to focus on. I'm going to introduce these to you, and hopefully they'll give you, as I say, some idea of what to look out for as you read the novel itself. So the first of these relates to the heroine. The heroine of Mansfield Park is a young woman called Fanny Price. Fanny is born in Portsmouth into, if not quite poverty, then certainly into difficult circumstances. But she gets the chance to move to and live with her uncle and aunt in Northamptonshire, where she enjoys a much better quality of life. When you think about Fanny and you think about what kind of characteristics she has, what kind of personality she has, it's worth reflecting on some of the qualities she doesn't have. She's not someone you could describe as witty or confident or outgoing or mischievous or irreverent. She's none of those things. And the reason I mention those qualities is because those are all adjectives that you could apply to Jane Austen's most famous heroine, who is Elizabeth Bennet from Pride and Prejudice. So Fanny is a very different proposition from Elizabeth Bennet, much more shy, self-contained and inhibited. It's also worth knowing that many readers have found it easy to dislike Fanny Price, that some have alleged that behind her shy and self-effacing demeanour lurks someone who is quite pious, quite joyless, and also quite high-minded, has a sense of her own moral superiority and kind of looks down on other people. She has been perceived as, in some ways, Mansfield Park's resident killjoy. So whenever fun threatens to break out in the household, she's the person who wags her finger and frowns and disapproves. So there are reasons why some readers, at least, have taken against Fanny Price, but there are very different perspectives on her as well, and those perspectives focus on Fanny as someone who, in the course of this novel, is at the sharp end of behaviour that is unpleasant, often kind of bullying, exploitative, and even abusive. But she is extraordinarily resilient in the face of these difficult circumstances, and she comes through. So other readers then have focused on the kind of admirable strength and resilience of this character Fanny Price exhibits. So I've given you there two very different portraits of the same character, inviting you, I guess, to think about which of those you find most plausible as you read the novel. And as you make up your mind, as you think about those, in a way, competing arguments about Fanny Price, once you begin to enter that debate, you're joining in a debate that has been nicknamed the Fanny Price Wars. It's a kind of a slightly facetious nickname, I guess, for this debate about whether we're meant to like Fanny or to regard her as a kind of pious killjoy. But once you join those Fanny Price wars, I guess you'll have your own opinions, and perhaps it's possible to remain neutral, like Switzerland, and not to join in the wars at all. My second point of controversy then is the setting of the novel. The novel is set in a country house, and I think it's fair to say that we, and by we I mean, I guess, Brits or people in the United Kingdom, we seem to have a thing about country houses, whether it's Downton Abbey, whether it's Brideshead Revisited, whether it's Charlotte Bronte's Jane Eyre or Ian Forster's Howard's End. Stories of country houses loom quite large in our collective imagination and in our reality as well. So up and down the country, every year people will flock in their thousands to go and visit country houses. And it's worth thinking about what is the appeal, what is the attraction, why do people want to go to these particular institutions take photographs and have high tea or whatever it is you do at a country house. I suppose some of the qualities that country houses offer, they are elegant, they are picturesque, they are historical, in a way they are monuments to a certain kind of, I suppose, pre-industrial chapter in British history. And you could almost say that they are almost kind of synonymous with civilization, that the country house, it's obviously it's human made, but it's against a natural backdrop. So you could see it as almost a kind of something that exhibits a sense of harmony between the human and the natural. They go together in a kind of elegant and symmetrical way. If you're lucky enough to live in a country house, the chances are that you have servants. The chances are that you may have a butler and footmen. You probably don't do your garden. You probably have people to do that for you. And you won't just have a garden. You may well have rolling parkland and landscaped grounds as well. So country houses obviously are very hierarchical as well. That they take you back to a sort of not just a pre-industrial chapter of British history, but also one in which I guess the kind of the hierarchy from the lords and ladies down to the serving classes and the poor was much more kind of visible. So when we, which at least some of us do, flock to country houses or read stories about people who live in country houses, it could be argued that we are in a way venerating the British class system. So that's my second point of controversy, is to think about what Jane Austen does when she represents an English country house. Does she idealise it? Does she see this as somehow the perfect model of the way life should be? And in a sense, would that therefore make her a kind of very kind of nostalgic establishment writer who is hung up on these very kind of traditionalist models of social hierarchies? Or would there be a way of reading this novel satirically, I suppose, as a novel that has mischievous or subversive things to say about the kind of social hierarchies that are embodied in the country house? So that is controversy number 2. Moving on finally to controversy number 3. This relates in the first instance to the question of power, and in particular the question of who is the most powerful person in the novel. I suppose the best answer to that question, I would say, is the person who owns the country house, the landowner, the head of the family, the head of the household, and that is Sir Thomas Bertram. So this is Fanny Price's uncle. What's worth noticing about Sir Thomas is, although he is the most powerful person in the novel, he spends a fair amount of it out of the picture. He's not there. So where is he then? Where does Sir Thomas go? Well, it so happens that he goes to Antigua. He goes to Antigua on business. Why does this happen? Why does Austen feel the need to send Sir Thomas to Antigua? One answer to that question is that she needs to get him out of the way so that the novel can happen. Once you get the most powerful and authoritative person out of the picture, then it means that people can behave in different and perhaps uninhibited ways. And this is one of the themes of the novel, is what young people get up to when they are to a certain extent unsupervised. So Austen needs him out of the picture. She sends him to Antigua. She could have sent him anywhere. She could have sent him to Antwerp. She could have sent him to Anglesey. But no, it's to Antigua that he goes. Is this significant? Do we need to think more about this? Well, many critics in recent years have attached an awful lot of importance to this kind of contextual detail, because Antigua in the 18th century was under British rule. So this is a British colony that Sir Thomas is going to. This is a place whose economy at the time was dominated by sugar, and the sugar plantations in Antigua at the time were worked by tens of thousands of slaves. So we need to think about this as something that the novel doesn't highlight or underscore in any kind of conspicuous way, but we can still notice it, and we can infer that it is extremely likely that Sir Thomas Bertram, the owner of Mansfield Park, the head of the household, the most powerful person in this novel, is a slave owner. So what do we make about this? And in particular, what do we make about Austen's very, very kind of indirect representation of the question of slavery and the question of colonialism, the fact that at the time of writing, Britain ruled kind of territories all around the world. One thing we might infer from this is quite a disturbing insight, I suppose, that Austen is giving us, that if you think about Mansfield Park, the country house, as a place that is somehow this elegant, picturesque institution that is in some way synonymous with civilization itself, this is civilization which in a way is built on the blood and bones of exploited and dehumanized African slaves. So there is a kind of very kind of disturbing underside to civilization that the novel is perhaps letting us see. Now, this is really where the controversy becomes at its sharpest. Some readers read a novel like Mansfield Park as a novel that is really quite squeamish about giving us the full truth of the horror and the barbarism of slavery. That it's sort of it's an almost elegant cover-up, that it doesn't really want to confront that subject matter too closely. At least one cinematic adaptation of Mansfield Park has done it very, very conspicuously and directly. And it puts Sir Thomas's status as a slave owner front and centre, so it's unmissable. But Austen is much, much more indirect. So think about that indirectness when you read the novel. Is the indirectness a symptom of Austen's squeamishness, in which he preferred not to get too close to this really horrific truth about British quote-unquote civilization at the time of writing? Or should we regard her very kind of circumspect and indirect treatment of slavery and colonialism as simply another facet of her genius for understatement? And this is one quality of her writing which is very important to recognise, is she's not a writer who always feels it necessary to spell out exactly what she means, that she trusts the reader. She uses irony and understatement to let the reader come to their own conclusion. So it's possible that this novel is designed as really quite a kind of sharp expose of the slave trade, but one that lets the reader get there by reading between the lines. So a novel with a controversial heroine, a controversial setting, dealing with something that could scarcely be more timely and topical and controversial, which is the whole legacy of colonialism. So lots to think about there, and I do very much hope you will enjoy reading this, thinking about those questions and reading the novel.